take us back to the studio. What constituted a recording studio back in 1990? Like, what was the
whatever it constituted, we didn't have it.
Yeah, right. What were you using?
Well, I mean, we the initial studio had an Atari computer for the sequencing, which was what was it, Commodore 64 or something, wasn't it?
Just after the Commodore 64. We're talking early computer days when we should have bought shares in Microsoft. And Apple, actually.
And Apple.
And eBay and everyone else.
Yeah, so, I mean, back then it was all of the, when you wanted a keyboard sound, you had to buy the keyboard. So we had, I remember we saw on the cover of a European magazine a picture of Fatboy Slim, and he was holding a few bits of gear, and we were like, what are they? We've got to have them. And there was a TR-909, and there was a
303.
A 303, and I think there was a 909 or an 808 drum machine in the background as well. And so our early equipment and everything was connected by a MIDI.
Yeah.
And the computer basically just put out the messages to play all of the instruments, and then you had to record it to some finished thing. So we eventually got a desk that we could run all the audio through, and we got an 8-channel multi-track, and we bought our first sampler, and
it was what dance music producers today would not have a concept of.
Yeah.
We weren't on tape, but we were recording to tape, but we weren't literally like,
slicing the tape,
which is what they would do, say, 10 years prior to us.
Yeah, that's right.
But we were after that, so we were a computer-based studio. But the interesting thing was, there were Australia was a very rock-orientated country at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there was a lot of great, rock artists, In Excess, Jimmy Barnes, a lot of fantastic rock artists. But we were like completely going the other way and developing electronic music. And that at that time was a real, not taboo, but it was certainly frowned upon as not being music. They didn't consider what we were making as music because it was some electronic noise.
Yeah.
So we were pushing forward, and we loved that. We loved that Europe was developing this great musical sound that we wanted to produce and release in Australia. So, and that's hence why we embraced DJs and embraced the whole electronic medium, because it made us so excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we were already DJs, so we were already into scratching and doing tricks with vinyl. So, having another tool to do a trick with, which was a synth or a drum machine, was just to add on to that. So the initial studio was basically just me and Andy playing around with ideas, doing our own remixes of stuff, recording it to tape, and then maybe, recording that to a cassette and literally playing the cassette at a gig.
Yeah.
Which sounds so antiquated now, but you couldn't press it up, so that's what you did. And then we kind of, I guess our studio, I mean, back then and even now, if you want to go out and buy a high-end mixing desk for a major studio, I mean, $500,000 if you really want to go to that extent. So, but I think our studio was probably worth at its peak maybe $120,000, $130,000 of gear and investment in various bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And then basically that whole thing would now be worth probably $5,000.
Yeah.
If we had all that equipment still.
Yeah. Invested wisely.
Where is it? Do you have any of the original stuff?
We've got a whole bunch of...
Yeah.
Look, the keyboards and stuff, the old vintage keyboards and the old drum machines, we've got a few things like that. We've got this really crazy 909 that got modified by a Melbourne guy called Robin Whittle, is it?
Yeah, I contacted Rob. Well, he didn't make it. It was someone else.
Oh, there you go. But we got this crazy 909 drum machine that's been modified, and it's got all these extra filters and stuff, which is there's probably only one of them in the world, you know. So we've kept some of those things because they're rare, and ultimately you can still sample them and get sounds out of them and play around with them. But the things that have kind of gone is like, we had a 40-channel digital desk that now, because everything gets recorded into the computer, effectively the computer is the digital desk.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of music now is you can have, a decent computer and some musical skills, and you can make music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So while it's much more attainable and there's a lot more bad stuff out there's a lot more good stuff too.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people who can have an idea and they're not held back by, I can't record it properly or I can't do this properly, because really, if you've got a good idea, you can make an instrumental club record in your bedroom, and a lot of people are doing it.